All right, welcome to the channel, and today we'll be talking about the topping D90III Discrete. Say that 3 times fast. Yeah, this was sent out by Apos Audio. They are not asking me to say or do anything other than my honest opinion regarding this device, and we'll be going back out to them as soon as this video is done. So thank you, Apos Audio, for the opportunity to give this a go. So let's dive right into build, aesthetics, and then we'll go into sound and my thoughts, final thoughts, that kind of stuff. But yeah, let's dive right into build and aesthetics. All right, so let's talk about the build quality of the topping Discrete 3 here, and we'll start with the pretty standard topping remote. It's plastic. The buttons are definitely cool sounding, nothing crazy there. You can see it changing on the monitor there. The volume pot, let's see if I can get this to, has a nice chunkiness to it. It's got a nice stepped, almost like notch going on there. It's also how you kind of can select and move around a little bit with the device, though I do recommend having the remote because that is definitely a little bit easier. I did notice that it's a little bit slow when using it, like it doesn't react quite super fast with the remote, but nothing crazy there, not like a big huge problem overall. So let's dive into the actual build of this. Is power it down, unplug everything. So the front plate is pretty solid, nothing crazy, aluminum, metal. Really cool though here, and probably won't be able to see it because it's all shiny. See my little light in the background there, but this is actually see-through, and you can actually see the R2R, I believe, discrete chip that's in there. There's a little window. It's actually kind of smaller than the whole screen. It's only about that big as far as the actual window. The reflection is not really allowing me to show it to you guys, but you can see the chip inside through that kind of blacked out tinted window there. Top, pretty standard fare, aluminum box. Actually dig the little notches here. Not that that makes anything other than aesthetics, which, hey, we're here for, right? So dig the aesthetic overall. The silver, I probably would like the black one more than the silver one here, but you know, neither here nor there. But yeah, so that's more or less the top and sides. Bottom, pretty standard fare. Pretty nice rubber feet. I dig the little gold or bronze accents that it has here. But yeah, more or less the pretty standard fare, rubber feet. And then let's go to the back. We have your, obviously the D90III Discrete little logo there, your XLRs, RCAs, and coax, your IIS, optical, USB, AES. This is a Bluetooth antenna. I don't really use Bluetooth on these too much, so I never really put the antenna on. And then your trigger system, what have you, your power supply or power in, and then your on-off switch, which pretty solid, nothing too crazy. And that's more or less the build. It's solid, no major issues at all with the build. And I'm not a big fan of the silver color, but that's just a preference thing. So, you know, whatever. The aesthetics wise, I think is actually pretty solid. I dig on it. I overall like the look of the screen and the overall design of the monitor. So, but that's the build and aesthetic, and we'll move on to sound next. Okay, so talking about sound, now that build and aesthetics are out of the way, sound. Let's see. I really like this actually, and to kind of get this out of the way or up front with you all is I'm not a big topping fan in general, but as of late there's been a couple of topping devices that I've had come in through Apos or whatnot, and have been actually pretty impressed. I'm impressed by the sound quality for my preferences, that kind of thing. And the first one was the Centaurus that I was really impressed with, which was the kind of the Hollow Audio collab. They used a Hollow Audio R2R chip or PCB or what have you. Not an engineer. And then that one was fantastic. Really loved that DAC. And then in comes this one, the D90III Discrete. And this is really impressive, actually. And I didn't use it fully in the sense of what that 1-bit thing is or what kind of thing. So take that into account. This is from my perspective, using it in the way that I would use it, which is as using it with Qobuz, using it with my FLAC files, locally owned, and then just even Spotify, like whatnot. And then also I don't really do DSD. Mostly I'm doing PCM type listening or what have you. So that's something just to be upfront. That's how I use this. And the main chain that I use this was with the niche Piety, and then the Pietis Maximus and the Apos Audio Gremlin, which is a little tube hybrid thing there, balanced and fantastic across the board. I really enjoyed all of those combinations, but the one I ended up landing on the most, maybe it was just because it was easy and I'm editing photos and it's on my editing area over there, was the niche Piety. Yeah, make sure I'm pronouncing that right. So sound, sorry, back to sound. This thing is, I mean, if I was to describe it into basically like just a one word, I would say smooth. Couple of words, I'd say smooth, flowing, easygoing, with plenty of detail, plenty of dynamics and slap, what have you. Like the punchiness of it was really excellent. Just really impressed with the overall sound performance of the topping D93 Discrete. So yeah, just fantastic. And I did a couple of tracks to kind of highlight some of the things that it does well, or that I found that it did well. One of the big things I will say before I dive into the tracks with my handy dandy notebook here, was that I really kind of keyed on the imaging, the stage, and just how smooth and like wide and detailed the imaging and stage was, while still being just really easy to listen to. There was never any like moments where, and mind you, your headphones are going to be the biggest factor in like peakiness, that kind of stuff. But this helped. Like it was just really smooth. It was just really easygoing, really flowing through the tracks. And my main headphone that I used was the Atrium from ZMF, and love that headphone. And it's kind of like my reference headphone currently for doing these kind of things. I also listen with my other ZMF collection, so my VC Verite closed, Verite opens, my Atrium closed, the Bokeh closed, but the main one I used was the Atrium. On to the tracks. The tracks that were used were, I'm going to hopefully not butcher these names, and I will put the lovely image of what the track is over my lovely mug, because no one needs to be seeing this more than they need to. Pronunciation: Jihye Lee Orchestra, and the track is Surrender. And this one I really want, or what I keyed on, the things that I really was just like, oh, it was really amazing, was one, the expansiveness of it, and the brass and the percussions really stood out for me in this track. But the big ones were staging and imaging was just really fantastic. And it was just this whole album is really fantastic. It's like a jazzy orchestra-y type album, I guess. But yeah, fantastic track. Really was impressed with it. But the things that to really look at or look for that I keyed on were the brass, so your brass instruments like your trumpets, that kind of thing, to your percussions, which would be anything like, drum set, that kind of stuff, and then stage and imaging. Moving on to the second track, and this one I was, it's just really interesting, and I've really been enjoying this album from this artist. And in fact, I did one of her tracks on my previous video, but this is, I'm going to butcher this name, Eusexua, Eusexua by FKA Twigs. The things to look for this that I keyed on this track were the details, the smooth mids, the smooth just across the board, and the flowing sound, like the way the sound flows together and everything else. But there's all these little like details. There's all these little crazy little like digital details and what have you. And then the electronic bass, it was really kind of, wasn't overly like slappy or super punchy, but it really had this nice dynamicness to it, which I was really digging on. But the big key takeaways would be the details and the little like imaging aspects of the different like digital placements and that kind of stuff, for the different sounds and everything. On to the third and final track, and this one is kind of close to my heart. Like I grew up listening to this artist with my dad and going to the beach, going surfing, going snowboarding, skateboarding, everything. We always had at least once a week we'd be listening to some Bob Marley. But this one is specifically the Redemption song, and the album that this comes off of that's key is the Chineke orchestra version of this song, of Redemption Song. And so the Chineke orchestra version is just, it's crazy good. That whole album, I actually have it on vinyl. I love it so much. But the things to key on, and I'll obviously link all these tracks below, but the things to key on with Redemption Song with the Chineke orchestra is the strings, the vocals, and the imaging and stage. And then I believe the way that they did this recording was that they took his vocal recordings from one of his previous tracks, and then they cut out the music and then overlaid, or basically put his vocals there and then mastered it with their orchestral score behind his vocals, and it's fantastic. So once again, things to look for in this track are strings, vocals, the imaging and staging, and then just those smooth transitions, and just fantastically done, mastered album in general. But that's a really fun track to follow up on. Well, I guess sound-wise, that's kind of my thoughts on the sound of this. It's fantastic. I'm really impressed by this, and the just overall recent topping products have just really, as far, especially in this $1,000 range, which I guess they're kind of cannibalizing themselves to some degree with the Centaurus and now the D90 Discrete 3 or D90III Discrete. I think these are fantastic. Both those two devices, or this one and the Centaurus. The Centaurus is more of like that traditional R2R, where this one is, I believe, still an R2R. I don't know if you can see it here, but there's like a window. Some of it's blocked out, but it's kind of too glossy and shimmery. You can't really see through it. But in person, you can see right through, just barely, and you can see the chip that they're using. It looks like an R2R to me. So it's like a different variance of an R2R, I guess. I'm not an engineer, but yeah, this one is very impressive. The main takeaways were definitely the smoothness and the overall ease of listening. I just really enjoyed listening to it. There was never any moments where it just took me out of anything, and I was just really impressed with the sound signature of this device. So moving on to final thoughts, and who is this for? Final thoughts. One of the cool things with this is that it also has the ability to basically take active speakers for your desktop, or if you had bookshelf speakers and you wanted to control them, you can control this device. You control your active speakers with this, with the volume control. And so that's a really cool thing with the preamp, that kind of deal. And then so there is a little preamp in here, so that's really a nice touch and added benefit to this device as well. And that could work with anything from your headphone speakers to your headphone amps, to your basic 2.1 setup, that kind of deal, as well as directly into your a desktop bookshelf speakers or desktop speakers, and you wanted to be able to control the volume with them here. Very cool. So I think this definitively fits into those kind of spaces very easily. It's a highly recommended device in my opinion, just for the sheer fact of how it sounds good. It's just a really easy to get along with sounding DAC. So, and at the price point, it's definitely competing with some very, very well done devices in that space. And in my opinion, this price range and this level of sound quality is, you're fighting against Cyan 2, like I said, the Centaurus, and now this one, and there's some other DACs in there too. They're in that $1,000 price range, and to me, that's your first in stopgap in-game DAC level, where you just buy it, don't think about it, don't even buy another DAC or worry about DACs for a long time unless you're way into DACs. It's a weird thing to say, but yeah, this thing's definitely worth looking at if you're in that price point. I mean, I really enjoy it. So I'm kind of over gushing on this thing right now, but yeah, this thing's fantastic. I'm really impressed, and topping has really kind of converted me to some level, because I don't know if it's known, but bias forward here is that I've never really been a big topping fan. Especially their ESS stuff, it just never sat well with me. It's never been something that I've really jived with. It's always been too etched, and kind of like how I'm not the biggest fan of the Hi-Fi Man planar sound. I've always associated topping with that, kind of like that version of a DAC or amp was the Hi-Fi Man version of that, whereas these latest iterations have really kind of come with the heat. They were sounding really excellent, and they're really performing at a really good price point for what you're getting, especially lots of features, lots of capabilities. So yeah, easy recommendation if you're looking at that price range, for that $1,000 price range. This is a fantastic option, and yeah, I do recommend this one. So yeah, with that, I guess I will let everybody have their morning, afternoon, and evening back. And I guess I'm going to try and get some listening time in before I send this back off to Apos Audio or to the next person in line. So cheers, everybody. Thanks for joining. Have a good one.